Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam, Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, to the weekly halaqah. And so, inshallah ta'ala, I pray that everyone is well, and we'll begin, inshallah. Let's go on to the first slide, please. So this week, we've got a number of ayat just to look at, and it really is just a flavor. It's just to give you a taste of the immense richness, beauty, subhanallah, that's in the Quran. The layers and layers that is there. If we just spend the time to focus, to have this relationship with the Quran, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open our hearts and our minds to be able to penetrate the richness of the Quran. And so in this week, we're just going to briefly look at imagery and wordplay. So remember that the whole of the Quran, every ayat, every word, every letter is an ayat. It's a signpost. And so, it's just amazing how Allah Ta'ala uses imagery and wordplay to bring an ayat alive, to bring a word alive, to bring a whole surah alive. So in many ways, as you're reading a surah, as you're reading an ayat, it's like today we're used to film productions, etc., and how they try and bring a whole storyline together through sound, through imagery and the words of the actors. Subhanallah, nothing like how Allah subhanallah uses the same way, but in a most unbelievable way throughout the whole of the Quran that came down from the seven heavens, inshallah ta'ala, to us. So we really do need to have this relationship with the Quran and constantly turn to the Quran. The more we turn to the Quran, inshallah, with the tazkiyah al-nafs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to open the doors. And when we talk about those 4 layers of Islamic contemplation, the more that we immerse ourselves in the Quran, inshallah ta'ala, we will move up through those layers, inshallah. And it's once you move up through the layers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open doors for you just to see the immense beauty, to allow you to see things others won't see. And He allows you to go in there, to have a look around, to learn something which is beyond comprehension, and then the door closes. I can't describe it, but that's what the ulama talk about once you go up to these higher levels. And I can only describe it, it's like holding on to hot coal. And you describe it, it's like when you're there, maybe Allah will open an ayat for you, then onto another ayat, and you're on a whole journey. You've just lost the sense of time, and it's like you're hanging on to it. You want to go back to it, but then you have to come out of that door. That's the only way I can describe it. Anyway, inshallah ta'ala, bismillah, on to the first slide, please. Sound. So let's just go back to sound. So we have to understand that sound is important. The whole of the universe started with sound. Kun. Okay, kaf and noon. The noon, which is a vibrational noon. And the world, we learn, will end through the sound of the trumpet. So it starts with sound, and inshallah ta'ala, we learn that the whole universe will end with sound also. And one of the key missions given to the Prophet, which is there in Surah Jumu'ah, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which was the first mission, okay, not to teach, not to talk about fiqh, not to go into what we would do today in our Islamic institutes, was just yatlu alay, to recite on them sound. Okay, whether they listen or not, it's just to recite. Recite what? Recite the words of the Quran, which are coming down from the 7 heavens. And this is why we can really begin to make tafakkur and understand. There's no other language like it on earth where we have to really, to be able to recite the Quran, we have to be able to really understand and take on board the science. And it is a science of tajweed and the makhraj, making sure that we recite every letter precisely from the correct part of the mouth and or the throat. So sound is very important, because obviously that was the first mission, just to recite on them, not to teach it or to give tafsir, just to recite. And then we also learn that some of the leading figures of the Quraysh, there was Abu Sufyan, there was Abu Jahal and Anas. They count where they came out of their homes over 3 days, okay, and they would meet up. They came out of their homes just to listen to the recitation of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. It shows that profound sound that the Prophet was reciting of the Quran, the effect that it had on their hearts. And then there's the account where the Prophet was being persecuted in Mecca, and he went to try and reach out to the people of Taif, and then he was even persecuted there. And then on the way back, the jinn, there were a number of jinn that were passing, and they heard the recitation of the Prophet, and they stood there and they listened to it, and then quickly went back to their people. And that contact there with the Prophet, to listen to the recitation, the sound, that there on that particular point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that also in the Quran. So sound is very important. And when we look at frequency and we look at vibration and resonance, if we just put it into two simple terms, high frequency, low frequency. High frequency, that's what we need to be aiming for. That's the shield that protects us. Low frequency, that allows Iblees then to enter ourselves. And we're living in a world today where everything is based on low frequency, low vibration, and it's been designed and established deliberately to keep us in this low vibration, which causes not just illnesses, mental health issues, health and well-being. It puts us in a state of fear. We're constantly in a state of fear, which lowers every aspect of our vibration, of our resonance, of our energy, our frequency, which allows then shaitan then just to come in. Go on to the first slide after this, please. So the use of delicate sounds exhibits the Quran's ability to express meaning and images via the sound of its text. Move on. In Surah Taha, we just focus on the first ayat. Waswasa, okay? Then Shaitan, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, whispered, waswasa, whispered to him, and he said, "Oh Adam, shall I direct you to the tree of eternity and possession that will not deteriorate?" So this is what's taking place in Jannah, where Shaitan, A'udhu billah, is trying to mislead Adam alayhi salam. So these whispers of Shaitan, see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the wow and the wow with a fatha, the sin with sukoon, the wow with a fatha, and the sin. So this whisper is repeated twice. Waswasa, 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 subhanallah. And so these whispers aren't loud from Shaitan, okay? He has the shayateen. Now the shayateen, okay, they can be jinn from the jinn world, they can be humans. They're mentioned in the last surah, Surah Nas. And these whispers of Shaitan are also there in the last surah. But the whispers of particularly of the humankind, who are the shayateen, the soldiers of Iblis, they're louder, they're very clear, they're very precise. But the whispers of Shaitan is very quiet and very whispered. So he'll whisper, he'll go away, and then he'll come back again. But just see how Allah Ta'ala just here waswasa. He repeats the wow, the seen, and the wow and the seen. SubhanAllah. Just in that this beautiful ayat. How he comes in, he whispers, he goes away, and it's like it affects us all that sound wasn't clear. It wasn't a high frequency, it was a very low frequency. So that first whisper affects us. Okay, it affects everything of the vibration, the resonance. It's confusing, and so we begin to doubt it. It begins to play on our mind, and then he comes back again. And then if you went to Surah An-Nas, okay, so again, waswasi, whispers of shaitan are mentioned also there. And we see in Surah An-Nas, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَٰهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَاسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي الصُّدُورِ. So sudur is plural for chest. So shaitan is in every and all of our chests. But shaitan wants to get into the heart. Not the pumping heart, but the qalb. Okay? That's his objective. And once he's in the heart, then that's it, game over. So you've heard of the expression, it's a perpetual war that we are in, and society, governments talk about it, the military talk about it. It's called a battle of hearts and minds. And so this is a constant battle, but shaitan's very clever. Just like we've mentioned before, that there's two times in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions shaitan in relation to footsteps. And these footsteps in the same way, they're not clear, they're very subtle. Just like here with shaitan in this sound, okay, very quiet and a lot of whispers, low frequency, okay, it's low. So and that's what puts the doubts into our mind, the low frequency, low vibration, low resonance, and the light becomes lower also. There's another example of sound. Next slide, please. But the sound, I said to you, is very important, and I just gave you some examples there from the Quraysh, including the jinn, and the first mission of the Prophet was to use the sound, yatlu alayhim, to recite. If we go to this particular surah, subhanallah, this is another aspect of sound, and you can miss it very quickly. This is why we need to constantly have a relationship with the Quran. Allah says that I wish my death had been the decisive one. Okay, and here it's just in the first part. Ya laytaha. I say now look after the ya, the lam, the ya sukoon, the ta, and then the ha. Ya laytaha. Look how we're supposed to recite that letter. Ya laytaha. It is I wish. It's the ha with which is that a leaf going up. We can miss it very quickly, and maybe we wouldn't even focus on it when we're looking focusing on tajweed. We'll learn how to recite it, but the deep meaning just on this letter brings the whole word alive through sound, and it opens up an imagery of what it's like. It's this yalataha. This it's a sound. It's a moaning sound, and it's a sign for destruction. Subhanallah. It's a sign for destruction. It's oh, I wish. Yalataha. 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 Oh, I wish. It's a heavy sight. So that leaf going up, it's a heavy bird. It's a heavy, oh, I wish. SubhanAllah. So if we can try, and the more that we learn the imagery in the sound, then every time we connect with the Quran, it will completely change our relationship with it. Next slide, please. And now let's look at word choice. Okay, so we'll go from sound to word choice. Okay, next one to the next slide. So Surah Al-Hadid, subhanAllah. We've mentioned before, we just mentioned when we talked about sound, that the first mission given to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was Yatlu Alayhim, Yatlu Alayhim. And so there's a number of surahs that come together, and they're called the Musabbihat. These are a number of surahs that come together. So when we start to look at the Quran in relation to structure, coherence, and order, the science is called Nazm of the Quran. Our ulama teach that surahs come in pairs, but sometimes they will come in more than just a pair. So there's a number of surahs that are there in the Quran that come together because there's a pattern, there's a relationship and context, those three terms I often talk about. And one of the key patterns is each one of these surahs, which begins with Surah Al-Hadid, begins with that everything praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sabbaha yusabbihu. Okay. And these surahs also, another relationship is when we look at a surah, was it revealed in Mecca or was it Madani revealed in Medina? These are Medina surahs. And just to give you a brief sort of background, that the Muslims have left Mecca, they've gone to Medina, they begin to establish the Islamic State, where in Mecca there were very few Muslims, but those that were Muslim were staunch on their deen. La ilaha illallah, Tawheed was there. And then when they moved to Medina, there was still the staunch Muslims, but there was two other, should we say, groups of Muslims. There were those that embraced Islam, but they were sort of borderline. They were happy to learn, but they didn't want to sort of go into too deep and all the sacrifices. Now we've got to go into battle. That's a bit too much for us. And then there's the munafiq. So there were three types of Muslim. And so when that strong group is being bombarded by the munafiq, which is in a way becoming sort of quite a large group, and then the majority that are sort of borderline Muslim, then it's that group that become the dominant factor in the community. So really, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, look how creation is in continual ibadah of me. Why don't you do that at the same time? But the emphasis here in ayat 20 is, let's go through the translation here, that know well that the worldly life is but play and amusement, and a show of beauty and exchange of boastful claims between you, and a competition of increasing riches and children. All this is like rain, the vegetation of which attracts the farmer, then it withers, and you see it turning yellow. Then it becomes straw. And in the hereafter there is a severe punishment for the disbelievers, and forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah's pleasure for the believers and the righteous. And the worldly life is nothing but material of delusion. Compete each other in proceedings towards forgiveness from your Lord, and to paradise, the width of which is like the width of the sky and the earth. It's been prepared for those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messengers. That is the bounty of Allah that he gives to whomever he wills, and Allah is the Lord of the great bounty. Quite a lengthy ayat there, but we're looking at words now, word choice, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses certain words, okay? And if we just look at this long ayat, ayat 20, although I went into the other ayats there, in around 8 words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has basically compressed our entire thought process, okay, of our lives. Meaning, we start our life as a baby, okay, And then we go through, as we get older, we go through the stage of amusement, backward. And then we go through it older into our teenage life. We go through this pomp and we go through the beauty, zina. And then we go through this boasting stage and this rivalry, okay? And that is what we call is tafakkur. And so in just a few simple words, not simple, but for important words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown the whole thought process of our lives, okay? Now, it starts with play, okay, as a toddler, la'ibun, and it goes to lahwan, and it goes to zinatun, okay, in the teenage stage, and then to tafakkur. So tafakkur. And then that final stage, or one before when we get old, is that stage when we get married and we have kids, and that goes to takathur. So we've had tafakkur and takathur, not tafakkur as in contemplation. Three key words that we can get confused with. One is tafakkur and takathur. Okay, so the tafakkur is that stage where we get married and we have kids. Then that gets the rivalry stage and the whole. And this is what happens with lots of families, particularly with the mums, that we're so preoccupied with, with the kids getting ready for school and what they need and picking them up and taking to school and after school classes. This is what we are continually doing, and Allah just mentions it, all of this life, this whole process in about 8 words. But what's interesting then is then how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then connects it, it gives us lessons in relation to growth, the likeness of vegetation, subhanallah, after the rain. And it's either you have a believer that's looking at what he's grown, or you have a non-Muslim that's looking to wait for the rain. So this comparison, okay, how we lead our life going through this growth period, and then the likeness is also the likeness of vegetation after rain. Likewise, the seed to the sapling, and it grows and grows and grows. But then when it grows, then it withers down into that yellow stage and then back to dust. So it's this beautiful wordplay that Allah is wanting us to really sort of think about, and teaches us through this parable such a different lesson compared to perhaps in Surah Al-Zumar, where Allah is talking about the cycle of the rain. But here, the main lesson here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His mercy is for everyone. It's free and it's open to all. Okay, but it's how do we make use of this mercy? As I said to you, you're either looking at it in terms of a believer or a non-believer. For a non-believer, going through your childhood, going through your teens, going through all this is so important. But even as a non-believer, you go through your toys, you get bored, and then you get your presents, you get bored, and you just want to go on and on and on and on. Okay, you're a non-Muslim, they have boyfriends, they have girlfriends, and then they just move on. They get bored very quickly. Okay, and so it's all about connecting to the dunya, particularly in this satanic world, that the whole point of Iblees is that he wants to keep you wanting more and more and more. And as a believer, we have to be very careful that we don't go down that same road as well. Nothing wrong in having the dunya. There's the dua, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban. Oh Allah, give us the good of this dunya. But here, it's hasana. Give us the good of the dunya, the good of this dunya, the hasana, that is going to open doors for me on my journey. And so this rain, so that's the sequence in how Allah, in roughly 8 words, enables us to connect with the life of each and every one of us, from a baby going up. And as parents, how we look at it from our children, and we can see it in society, and how then to compare that to the vegetation and the rain. So the rain, for the believer, we can look at it in relation to, we're waiting for the rain to come down to enable the vegetation to grow. For us, it's like a spiritual harvest. It's like spiritual grain. Whether that rain comes down or not, then that's down to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My job is to sow the seed, and then I'll wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My job is to go through this life, from a toddler to go through my stages of life, to a teenager, okay, to an adult, to get married. But in all aspects of my life as a believer, that I'm in a state of worship. Okay. Whereas the non-Muslim farmer, they're just waiting the whole life for that year. Their sustenance depends. They've planted the corn, they've planted the wheat, the peas, the potatoes. They're just waiting for that rain. Without the rain, they're finished. There's no sustenance. There's nothing coming in. Okay, so they depend on it. But once that rain comes, then they get totally bored. Okay, they harvest the crop, they pack it, they sell it, and now they move on to something different. Whereas our approach is from a spiritual harvest, and it's spiritual grain. So others who are disbelievers, I say, they look at the dunya. Okay, what can I take from it? I will go for it. I will get it. I'll play with it. I'll use it. I'm bored. Then I need to move on. So yes, as Muslims, we can take from this world, but we have to understand that everything is also it's a test. We have to be very careful. But just see how Allah uses those amazing words in just within in a handful of words, how Allah connects the life of a human, okay, with different stages, and then comparing it, as Allah does in many places in the Quran, in relation to rain and vegetation. And when Allah often talks about rain, there's the rain as in rain water, but when Allah talks about rain often, it's also a lesson that as the rain comes down and it allows the vegetation to grow, the rain is also an understanding. It's also the revelation comes down. And the revelation comes down and it will land on different surfaces. And if it comes down and your heart is there to accept it, then just like the vegetation, it will also grow. This is a very large subject to sort of go into. But I just want to go on to another ayat here, because we will continue with the word sequencing. Go on to the next one, please. So precise word sequencing. So here in Surah Hadid, we just looked at how Allah uses roughly 8 words. And again, it was connecting with imagery, the growth of the child to the adult, and then looking at the vegetation after the rains come down. But now we're going to continue with how Allah uses words precisely, but then allowing us to make tafakkur, stand back and make tadabbur, and make a few changes. Okay, well, if I put that word here and that word there, how would that play out? What imagery would that portray? So let's have a look at that, inshallah. Next slide. So we go to Surah Al-Shams, okay? Now, so this is Surah 91. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we just go through the translation, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا, by the sun and its light, by the moon when it follows it, by the day when it illuminates, by the night when it covers, by the sky and the one who created it, by the earth and the one who spread it out, by the soul and the one who perfected it, undoubtedly, and then inspired it with evil and piety. Undoubtedly, the one who purified it has succeeded, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا, and the one who soiled it has certainly failed, وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا, and then goes on to talk about the people of Thamud who rejected because of their rebelliousness. And then when the worst of them stood up, and then when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, warned them, do not interfere with the camel of Allah and its drinking. And then, however, they rejected him. And then in ayat 15, his actions because of the wisdom. So 15 ayats, but I just want to focus on ayat 5. وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا, and ayat 6. وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا. So ayat 5, okay, by the sky and the one who created it, and by the earth and the one who spread it. So Surah Shams 91. And although then I just want us to then, if we could just look at Surah and the next Surah, Surah Al-Layl 92. And there, Surah 92, let's look at Surah 92, which is the next Surah. So remember, we're looking at pairs. In ayat 3, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنثَى, by the one who created male and female. So remember, when we are looking at the Nazm of the Quran, here it's here in the slide. So it starts with in Surah 92, by the night when it covers, by the day when it illuminates, and then by the one who created the male and female. Remember, I said to you when we first started with Nazm of the Quran that the surahs are paired. And although when we looked at Surah Hadid and Surah Jum'ah and Surah Hashr, there's a number of surahs that come together. But generally, when we're doing the Nazm of the Quran, surahs come in pairs. So we've got Surah Shams and Surah Al-Layl, 91 and 92. Now, let's just have a look at ayat 5 and ayat 6. Replace the word sky with man. So let's replace the word sky, which is in Surah Shams, with man, which is from the next surah, and earth with woman. Okay? Because in Surah Al-Layl, Allah says, I swear by the one who makes, who made the male and the female. Okay? He made the male and the female. So there are similarities in this relationship. So remember I said to you, everything based on relationships, patterns. So there are similarities between Surah 91, Shams, and 92. Between the sky and the earth. So, first of all, first relationship, the two surahs, pair. That's a pair. That's your first relationship. Second relationship, that in Surah Shams, there's a relationship between the sky and the earth. So here, okay, this is why when we go to the first ayat, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, when we talk about reading Iqra, okay, to be able to penetrate the Quran, we've got to be able, when Allah talks about trees, when Allah talks about planets, when Allah talks about oceans, we really do need to delve into this study. You know, if it's ecology, geology, botany, to really understand these ayats that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us. This is all connected with Iqra. This is why our ulama were ulama and polymaths. So the first relationship is between the two surahs. Now, here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing together a similarity for us to look at, ponder about in the relationship between each other. So the first relationship, the sky and the earth. And it's something for you to do. Start to research what are the characteristics of the sky. Second, what are the characteristics of the earth? It's a massive topic, but just to give you a flavor, okay, to start to bring these ayats alive. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making a parallel, a comparison between the sky and the earth. Okay, likewise between the male and the female. So in a very simple way, although try and do some study, what are the characteristics of the sky? What are the characteristics of the earth? Likewise, what are the characteristics of a male human? What are the characteristics of a female? Okay. But in both of those similarities, they come together. The sky and the earth come together. Okay. And the male and the female, Surah 92, they also come together. An example here, which also can connect us to Surah Hadid, when Allah talks about the growth from the child through to the teenage stage, to the adult stage, and then how to compare that to rain and vegetation. Again, we're back to this rain, okay? The sky and the earth, they come together in a relationship, and that relationship is based on rain. That the rain comes down, one of the characteristics of the sky, the rain comes down and it impregnates, impregnation, it impregnates the earth. The sky sends down rain, okay? And the water penetrates the earth, it impregnates it. Now, it's a massive subject, but this impregnation of the soil, and it's there in the Quran, but we just haven't got time to go through it, is a door to understanding the vibration of the soil. It's a massive subject. But anyway, we're talking about this relationship. And providing this all happens, okay, the outcome is a plant will grow, the seed will spring open, and the sapling will come out. For example, a tree will then grow. And this beautifully can connect us to many ayats in the Quran. But I always like to go back to Surah Ibrahim, but we can go to many ayats. If the seed is hit correctly, the sapling comes out and the tree then grows, okay? And it can grow into a perfect tree or perfect plant, which is going to benefit that ecosystem and creation, which beautifully gives us a relationship with Surah Ibrahim and the good tree. Or it can be a negative relationship, and it can be like further down in Surah Ibrahim, where Allah talks about a bad tree. Okay, that tree is not good for the ecosystem, and therefore not good for society, and therefore it's not a good lesson. It's either a positive lesson or a negative lesson. Likewise, the male and the female, the husband and the wife, they come together, and the male impregnates the female, and the outcome is a child, okay? And that child can grow up and it can either benefit the parents, benefit society, become a Muslim, okay? And that has a beautiful relationship with Surah Ibrahim and the good tree, which sums up the whole of what a Muslim is and Islam. Or it can have a negative impact, okay? So just in those few words, look how subhanallah. In Surah Al-Hadid, Allah uses roughly 8 words to sum up the life of a human, and then the growth and the life of vegetation, And then here, Allah takes two surahs, Surah Shams, which is paired up to Surah 92. Look at them both, the sky and the earth, man and woman. Okay. Unless you go into Tadabbur, you've got to go through obviously the tafsir and all that first, and the Arabic. But unless you go into Tadabbur, you're not going to be able to see this, because obviously to understand the characteristics of the sky and the earth, the characteristics of the male and female, you've got to go into Tadabbur, and you've got to be able to study. So it takes time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through words, is making a similarity between their relationship, and it's just profound. Okay. And you can go down another path, which is an important path, because obviously this relationship, the characteristics of the sky, the characteristics of the earth, connects to every principle of heart seat. That the sky and the earth will not have a relationship if it's not based on the mizan, if it's not based on the principles of nature. Okay? And those principles of nature, which is the universal laws, the sunnah of Allah, those principles are also embedded in the human male and female. So although there's differences in the sky and the earth, there's differences in the male and female, Allah brings them together. So to close, really, it's every time we turn to the Quran, we should be able to take deep lessons, and whatever we're doing in the world, as soon as we see rain, it should be able to give us a lesson and connect us back to the Quran. When we see children playing, when we see a married couple, it should connect us back to the surah that we've been talking about. Okay. SubhanAllah. And that is about having a relationship with the Quran. That is about going continually into deep contemplation. But it's not going to happen if we don't also make that relationship with the tazkiyah al-nafs. Okay, and we'll just remain on that level one, which is just doing sit spots, which are important, but you won't move from sit spots. To move up to those higher levels where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enables you to see this, to be able to, Allah will open the doors and enable you to go through and to see these amazing connections in relation to sound, imagery, wordplay, and then, you know, just how you can change words around, and how the ulama have looked at this. Okay. SubhanAllah. So that's what I just wanted to cover. There's so much that we could have gone in from Surah Shams, particularly in the characteristics of the earth and the sky and the male and the female. But it shows you we didn't have to go into great depth of ayats today. The lessons were just in a very few brief ayats, a few letters. Ya laytaha, okay, oh I wish, and just 8 words in Surah Hadid. So 2 ayats in Surah Shams and 2 ayats in Surah 92. SubhanAllah. Any questions?
There was a question, who, when you were talking about the ayah, I wish that I was dead, I think the ayah, who was the ayah referring to?
That's those who that's us who, you know, we've ignored all of the truth, and we know that the outcome is the hellfire. I wish I'd listened.
Any more questions? Otherwise, inshallah, we can close.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.